I just finished what will be probably one of my top 5 favorite fantasy series that I think I will have ever read. Let's talk about it. Hey there everybody, welcome back to Fantasy Inc. My name is Wyeth, and today we are talking about The Path of Ascension by C. Mantis. This series took me forever to pick up, and it is because I went in judging the book by its cover. I know, I broke the biggest taboo when it comes to being a booktuber slash enjoyer of fiction. I saw the cover right there, and I thought, that's probably pretty YA. And for obvious reasons, it does have a very stylized image on the front. It looks directed to a younger audience. The fox doesn't help. But after I decided to put those preconceptions to the side and pick it up because a bunch of y'all recommended it to me, I was so thankful. This series took my heart by storm for many, many different reasons. But what really put my hesitation to bed was the fact that this series does carry out some very adult themes. It's not super gory or it's not too mature, but it does definitely have a lot of elements that is not directed to teen audiences, which I do appreciate because I'm too old to be reading about teenage romance. Not to say that that doesn't happen, at least in the first book. Before I go ahead and jump into the semi-spoiler-free review, I do want to mention that this book is kind of marketed as a lit RPG, though in my opinion, I don't really think it classifies as one. It definitely has a lot of elements like having AIs, but at the same time, it has more cultivation elements in it, more of a progression fantasy twist to it. So I would argue, though it does have a lot of similar elements to a lot of other lit RPGs out there, it definitely does not fall into that category, at least in my opinion, just because we don't have a stat window at the end of the day. And I do think that is what makes up what I consider to be a lit RPG book. But enough about that. We are here to talk about the summary, so let's jump into it. This series starts out like many others in the same genre does, and that is following an orphan named Matt. This orphan grew up on a backwater planet named Lily, and he sadly lost his parents at a very early age due to a rift break. Rifts are what we can all imagine, portals to pocket dimensions where we can fight enemies. Similar to dungeons in this aspect, that is where adventurers, or delvers in this case, can grow their power and go up the tiers, aka the different levels. And Matt, being an orphan on a very small planet, gets another kick to the shin when he realizes his Tier 1 talent is detrimental. He cannot cultivate his mana like everybody else can, which puts him at a severe disadvantage. After taking some great advice from a mentor, he decides to work his way at a tavern/inn to gain enough money to try his best to pay for his own spot in a rift to see if he hits Tier 3, level 3, if he can change his talent and make it not so bad for himself. Matt is a hard worker, and he continues in this way until he has an encounter that allows him to be put on what is the Path of Ascension, which basically is a goal to become level 25, tier 25, without any undue help before the age of 200. Basically, you can't have a level 45 give you a magical item that will allow you to scale very quickly to get all the levels that you need. No, they need to, by the skin of their teeth and by the sweat of their own skin, make every single tier threshold count themselves. So they need to do it all on their own. And in an empire that spans galaxies, only a very, very, very few have been able to do this. So Matt definitely is not picking the smallest of goals here, but he is an individual that will not be put down, which is why he's such a great main character. And he starts his journey on his way to what is the playpen, basically starting first 3 levels to get his feet underneath him in the book 1. Currently, there are 9 books out on Audible, 10 on Kindle, and I think 2 already completed on either the author's Patreon or Royal Road specifically. So this series definitely has a long way to go, and I just finished book 9 myself and have been so impressed with the series so far, which is pretty evident, right? Now we're going to go ahead, jump to the pro-con pro of why you should or should not pick this series up, but I say you probably should. The first pro that I'm going to speak on is going to be world building, which ironically is not a big enough word to describe all that is encompassed in this story. To give some context here, Matt is a member of what is considered the Empire, one of the 7 great powers within all the known universes. And they are ever expanding, grabbing worlds that are ideal for specific tiers, obtaining resources, competing with one another, going into small skirmishes or large wars. And there is so much to be said about all the politics that are encompassed in what C. Mantis wrote down here. And we get snapshots in every single book into what the larger picture looks like for the Empire and the other world powers, while we also spend 95% of our journey with the perspective of what Matt has going on. So when it comes down to it, you're getting a fantastic magic system, you're getting politics, you're getting great character growth, and phenomenal friends and enemies made along the way, which really sets this series apart in my opinion. The con I do want to mention here is that there are some light pacing issues, and that can be specifically pointed out in book 1, book 4 and 5, I think, and ironically in book 9. The pacing issues in book 1 stem from, I believe this is the first very large series that C. Mantis has ever written, and you can see as you're listening to the book or reading it that they were coming into their own writing style, basically getting their chops. And so with that, yeah, there are some issues when it comes to how long we're spending on certain issues or whether we're rushing through other ones. Book 4 and 5, to some degree, we spent too long on an arc in my opinion, although the arc itself is phenomenal, and after finishing it myself, I wouldn't have done it any other way, other than maybe one that'll jump into the deep dive. And finally in book 9, and kind of a later book, rushing through a little bit here and there. Not to say that it's overly done so, but it just feels like for spending so many times in what would be considered level 10, why aren't we doing the same in level 14, 15, and 16? Just as an example. So it is something to consider before picking this one up, but I do think that is a very light issue compared to all of the pros. Speaking of, the second and last pro that I do want to mention is that this is a beaming example of what progression fantasy should be. In my opinion, progression fantasy has a lot of issues that needs to get past, or a lot of pitfalls that I think authors usually fall into, that I think C. Mantis, may have stumbled here and there, but overall did a phenomenal job comparatively. Some issues like that are power scaling, having their protagonists be in a death-defying fight and having an insight come exactly when they need it to help them finish, having the main character have trouble relating to other characters at their own tier because they're leaving them so far behind, having almost unrealistic gains that really brings the reader out of the story, saying how even, we're reading fantasy, but that is super unlikely, right? C. Mantis does a phenomenal job at avoiding almost all of those, but really what sets Matt and his team apart from other progression fantasy series out there is that they actually face consequences. If there is a death-defying battle, Matt is leaving with a serious injury. If they are over-exaggerating their cultivation, then their domains take a hit and their concepts are shattered or broken to some degree. If they bite off more than they can chew, they might lose a growth item or a specific piece of their equipment that the audience members love and hate to see go. So yes, there are consequences with most of the actions that our main characters go through, and I think that really sets this series apart compared to other ones out there. So that is a couple reasons why I love this series to death and am so excited for what is to come in the future. As I mentioned earlier in the video, I am up to book 9 and I cannot wait for the start of the next arc in book 10. Before y'all pick this series up, 2 things I do want to mention. If you do go the Audible route, I believe there's a deal where the first 3.5 books are in a bundle. So if you're looking to save some money, you can get 3 books, 0.5 for the price of 1. The 0.5 is a novella on another team that Matt is good friends with, and I read a little bit of it, but really wanted to get back to the main story. So that is a perk right there. The second thing I do want to mention is that this series is pretty contentious. Some people love it, which I definitely fall into that camp, but also some people don't really care for it. So I recommend the best thing to do is to, if you are interested in the series, pick up the bundle. Like I said, you'll get 3 books for the price of 1, and that'll give you a good idea of whether or not you like the series or not before you have to buy 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So that's just a piece of advice that I have for all of y'all. Now we're gonna go ahead and jump to the deep dive where I'm gonna be chatting about all the spoilers up to and including book 9. So if you have yet to have read this series so far, feel free to click off this video, go pick it up, and join me back when you've caught back on up. And I hope y'all enjoy it as much as I have thus far. So let's jump into it. For this deep dive, I'm actually going to do something a little bit different. I'm going to ramble like I usually do at the start, but probably at the end I'm going to go through a bunch of points that I do want to mention because there is so much to talk about when it comes to this series. First and foremost, I am so thankful that book 9 actually had them completing the Path of Ascension. It has been such a long journey for them, but truly they deserved every single second of their celebration at the end, and it was tear-jerking with Matt going through the memories of his journey thus far, and I was so impressed with how C. Mantis has grown as an author as the series has come to fruition, and it has done a phenomenal job so far. When it comes to their actual path, I am so thankful for the romance aspect of it, which is a weird place to start, I know, for me, but a lot of series, they either completely ignore it, right? Or they go the exact opposite route and you're reading a harem book. I think this is the first series that I've ever read with a main character finding their love interest in book 1 and continuing to grow as partners through the series. I think they are great partners, and I think it has added a lot to the series as a whole. And then when you have Aster, the little sister who was doing her best to gain sapience in book 1, and then when we get to finally book 9 and she is, if not as paired with Matt and Liz, almost better by having started out this journey as a non-sentient fox. It's incredible. It is truly impeccable, and I'm so thankful that they finally have gotten to where they need to be. And in book 10, we will be starting the new arc, seeing our main characters join the war that has been going on for a few decades in the Empire with the other 3 powers that are not too happy with their expansion so far. So I think it's going to be awesome to see how our 3 protagonists are going to interact with Shadow and Light. I think it's going to be so cool to see how Melinda is in the know when they actually have been holding the secrets for so long about their own advancement, having Melinda been a part of this Team Zero for so long now, which is a guess, but I'm pretty sure we can assume that that is where she's been with Matthew. I am looking forward to seeing how the battles are going to be done with the tier restrictions. Are the battles just going to be for tier 25 and down? Can a tier 35 just join a battle and completely slay our main characters? I doubt that's how it's going to go, but at the same time, if that's a possibility, then that's going to add a lot of hurdles into what they can accomplish. All in all, I am excited to say the least. Now, when it comes to the con that I mentioned earlier on in the video, which is pacing, which I can get into the details with that. The first book definitely, it's a new author trying their best, and a lot of that issues I think were finished up within the editing process, so it really wasn't that bad. I think the playpen arc to the new world that Matt was attempting, where he met Liz with the guild starting to gain representation with those riffs, I think that was pretty okay pacing, pretty fast for what was going on, but still not too shabby. Minkala was a tough one for pacing. Deciding to split Minkala into 2 books, I do believe was the correct decision there. What kind of drug me out of the story was every single level of Minkala, we got a whole chapter on all the other perspectives of all the other participants in these ruins, and I think that was too much. Don't get me wrong, I did appreciate seeing other participants going through different aspects of Minkala, having some be too full of themselves and dying immediately, having some fight for their rights to level up and thinking down on themselves, but ending up persevering through the Minkala levels. So that added a lot of good flavor into the Minkala arc, but at the same time, I was trying to understand the relevance of it. There were some characters that definitely popped up in Matt, Liz's, and Aster's and Queen's journey through Minkala, but at the same time, I don't think it was incredibly relevant to the series as a whole. I think it was just, like I said, adding a little bit of flavor to what was Book 4 and Book 5. If I remember, that's where it was placed. So that was my main con with that arc, even though the arc itself was phenomenal. And then in Book 9, it was a fantastic book, but we were racing to the end by that point. I feel like the last half of the book, after they fought for the planet and actually took a loss there, which added some good character growth, was great, but we just spent the last half of the book completely ignoring them jumping through the tiers and really just focusing on their intents, which, don't get me wrong, the intents is the most important part to reaching level 25. So many people cannot hit it within the first 200 levels, and that is definitely seen through the book, but it definitely felt almost too slow, but also incredibly rushed. So yeah, it's a tough way to kind of put it into perspective there, but those who read Book 9, I think, will know what I'm trying to say here. So I have a lot of hopes for Book 10, now that they kind of don't have a deadline when it comes to their leveling speed, and I think leveling will almost take a complete back seat here because the Emperor is going to want them to stay at level 25, like I assume Light and Shadow have at this point, and I cannot wait to see those battles between those two teams, because there's no way that they don't go into a sparring session between the both of them. So very much looking forward to that. Now we're going to go ahead, jump to some of the points I want to make really quickly in the deep dive. When it comes to Matt's sponsors for the Path of Ascension, I believe it was Dina and Trevor, one of the two. That was such a huge red herring for Light and Shadow. I for sure thought the whole time up until we got to, what was it, the tournament, the Tier 10 tournament, that they were 100% Light and Shadow, and then once we finally get to Book 8, I realized that no, they're actually Stone and Stick, which is my assumptions. I think those will be confirmed in Book 10, so I'm looking forward to having that confirmed, but at the same time, big red herring there, and when it comes to who Light and Shadow actually were, we got both of their perspectives, Zach and Allie, at that Tier 10 tournament, and it was layered with us thinking that they were from a different power and not being a part of the Empire, which was so dang good in my opinion. The second point I'm very thankful for was Aster's Academy arc at the end of Book 8, if I'm not mistaken. I thought that was just going to be a super long interlude, almost novella that, wasn't really necessary to the story, but it gave so much more context into Aster as a character and to be a peer on the team that I, as an audience member, was not really understanding, which actually gave a lot more context into her not wanting to be the little sister on the team, her wanting to be a peer. I know I kind of just restated what I just said, but you'll get what I'm saying here. And the actual shenanigans that they got up to at the Academy was a lot of fun. We got to see Aster's actual desire to become the Beast Queen really solidify in the academy as she went up in the student council, and I think it added a lot of great slice of life elements to this cultivation / progression fantasy story that we had gotten through the series so far, but I really think it solidified her as a character, which I was so thankful of. One of the last things I want to mention is what is going to become of Luna now that they have completed the path. Is she going to stay around, stick with them to observe their growth and continue to help train them, or is she going to go off and do her own thing now that they have finalized their journey? I think Luna has been, if not a protagonist in the series, at least the fourth most important character within it, if we're discounting maybe Emmanuel the Emperor. So I am very interested and almost concerned to see if she goes by the wayside. I'd love to see her stick with these pathers, these ascenders, I should say, as they continue their journey, but that might be a stretch for the author to try and figure out how they're going to make that happen, especially now that war is coming and level 36s and up cannot contribute to the battles. So yeah, there is a lot of question marks around where her journey will go within the story as a whole. So all in all, I loved this series so dang much and will continue to do so, and I cannot wait to see where it goes from here. So with all that said, I do appreciate all y'all's time. I hope you enjoy this series as much as I do, and with that, be sure to keep reading.